I was calling the shots, but I was no kingpin. I was an idealist. The words weren't spoken aloud. They were typed quietly in a private digital journal. The screen glowed in the dark of a rented room in San Francisco, 2013. A heartbeat later, that same man, Ross Ulbricht, slid into a hidden chat under the alias Dread Pirate Roberts and authorized a hit. Then he minimized the tab, opened a gratitude list and wrote that he was thankful for sunshine and free speech. Stay with me. Because the last thing Ross tweeted after his 2025 presidential pardon rewrites everything you thought you knew about that journal entry. Can one mind champion radical freedom while calmly commissioning murder for hire? Ross Ulbricht was a Texas Eagle Scout who loved physics, gardening and economics. He had a Penn State master's degree in materials science and a vision that would make him both an icon and an inmate. He wanted to build an economic simulation outside coercion. No banks, no borders, no rules, just freedom. That vision became the Silk Road, a digital black market launched in February 2011. Ulbricht wrote the code himself. He set up the servers. He listed psychedelic mushrooms as his first product, just to test the waters. But the water got deep fast. By 2013, Silk Road had facilitated over 9.5 million Bitcoin in transactions, roughly $4.8 billion by today's conversion. It wasn't just a market, it was an ecosystem. Vendors had star ratings, transactions were encrypted, funds passed through a built-in Bitcoin tumbler to stay untraceable. It gamified trust in a lawless world. But behind the sleek interface was a man struggling to hold both his ideology and his humanity intact. Ulbricht's personal journal told a story far stranger than fiction. One entry spoke about kindness. The next listed Silk Road's top heroin vendors. He tracked profits while writing affirmations about peace. But when one vendor, known as Friendly Chemist, tried to extort him, Ross didn't hesitate. "Better safe than sorry," he typed, then paid $80,000 to have the man killed. That chat log later surfaced in FBI trial Exhibit 236. Let me pause right here and ask you, what detail first signaled Ulbricht's moral slide? Drop a timestamp in the comments. I want to know what moment tipped you off. By October 1st, 2013, the dual life ended. Ross was arrested in a public library in San Francisco. He was logged in, laptop open, diary file accessible. It was all there. Proof of authorship, chat logs, operational notes. In 2015, he was convicted on 7 federal charges and sentenced to double life in prison plus 40 years. That should have been the end, but it wasn't. Inside prison, Ross began publishing essays on stoicism, resilience and philosophy. His supporters, over 500,000 of them, grew louder online. They branded his sentence as government overreach. They said the murders were staged. They pointed to how Silk Road reduced drug-related street violence. In January 2025, President Trump granted him a full pardon. When he walked free after 12 years behind bars, the internet split in two. One side cheering for a digital age libertarian martyr, the other mourning the lives lost in the wake of his code. So what really lived beneath the surface? Let's dissect it. Ulbricht embodied what psychologists call the dark triad, a trio of personality traits that, when combined, predict high risk for manipulative, antisocial behavior: Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy. He rotated his Dread Pirate Roberts identity between multiple trusted users, ensuring that no single person, not even him, would be solely responsible. That's Machiavellianism, strategic delegation, psychological camouflage. In his journal, he compared himself to Babbage, the father of computing. He believed he might become a pioneer of human freedom. That's narcissism, an inflated self-concept veiled in good intentions. And then there's psychopathy. Not in the Hollywood sense of violent outbursts, but in the calm, calculated language Ross used to discuss potential murders. He spoke of risk exposure and trade-offs. He didn't flinch, he just typed and kept building. Neurological studies show that individuals high in psychopathy tend to have weaker connectivity between the amygdala and the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, regions tied to emotion regulation and empathy. In simple terms, they understand harm, but they don't feel it. But there's another layer, cognitive dissonance. Ross desperately wanted to see himself as a moral person, so he reframed everything. Overdose deaths, not his fault. The users chose the drugs. The dealers chose the platform. Silk Road, he wrote, was about freedom, not coercion. That's moral licensing. He saw himself as someone doing good overall, which made it easier to justify the bad. In prison, he helped tutor other inmates and started wellness workshops. Those actions, while meaningful, also helped soothe the cognitive split between the man who preached liberty and the man who once greenlit a killing. But dissonance doesn't disappear, it monetizes. Ross's anonymity made it easier to justify dark actions. Using Tor and Bitcoin created a psychological buffer. Transactions felt like data, not death. Plus, from 2011 to 2013, crypto was unregulated. There were no watchdogs, no real rules, the wild west of the web. And yet, post-arrest, the myth of Ross Ulbricht became more powerful than the man himself. Free Ross campaigns focused on government control, drug policy reform, and internet freedom. They downplayed the darker chapters. They painted him as a scapegoat. And in many ways, that narrative worked. Tech blogs and libertarian forums now cite Ulbricht as a visionary who dared to disrupt. His face appears in memes about what could have been. And the startup world? They still glorify risk, disruption, and hacking the system, even when the system bleeds. If your code upended a billion-dollar war on drugs, would you stop to count the bodies? That's the question this story forces us to ask. On the night of his release, Ross posted on Twitter, "Freedom is responsibility unleashed." 40,000 people liked the tweet in under an hour. There was no apology, no mention of the users who died. Just the same conviction he typed into his journal more than a decade ago, that liberty, in its purest form, was worth the cost. Maybe the mind most dangerous isn't the one chasing power, but the one convinced that power is liberty's price. And when anonymity meets ideology, what happens? Does the conscience log out or log on under a new username? Before you go, I want to hear from you. What tech-driven crime or dark web case should we dissect next through a psychological lens? Drop your ideas in the comments.